I can already hear the Disney earnings call, which we will be covering live this week, right here on Valiant Renegade. I can already hear Bob Iger talking about it's the biggest movie in the world right now. So what's the problem with this? The problem with this is right here. Renegade Online. Predator Badlands opening to a franchise record with $40 million. Now, this is unadjusted for inflation. You know, if you told me right now that $40 million was a legit record for Predator, I would say that this was a franchise that never was. And to an extent, I would agree with that because I think the only movie in the Predator series that is Predator is the first one from 1987 with Carl Weathers and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jesse the Body Ventura and so on and so forth. That was Predator. Everything since then has been trying to recapture that energy. I probably rewatch 1987's Predator once, if not twice, a year. I don't watch Predator 2 or anything else in the legacy there. They more or less don't exist to me. This movie more or less doesn't exist to me either. Let's look at what Anthony D'Alessandro has to say. Predator Badlands is now opening to $40 million. We spotted $39 million last night, talking about Saturday night. A record domestic debut for the 20th Century Studios' 38-year-old Predator franchise. Comes after a great hold on Saturday of $14 million, a mere 10% dip from Friday with Thursday previews of $15.6 million. Again, this is still not a great number for a movie that is tied to a very storied franchise like this. One of the biggest and most successful, especially post-theatrical, for Fox that they've ever had. It's still not that wonderful. I hate to tell you. Something we haven't seen in a while at the box office, a tentpole with an opening that grows throughout the weekend while besting its tracking forecast. After a torturous October, finally some optimism at the box office. Now, to his credit, Anthony is correct in all assessments here. The movie, in fact, did overperform. They initially anticipated that Predator Badlands was going to pop this weekend in the domestic box office with about $25 million U.S. and Canada, and roughly 35 or so million overseas. They were anticipating a $60 million global haul coming in, and we covered this on the show Wednesday. So, as of right now, it looks like it's actually getting better. But there's a few things here that need to be addressed. And there's some of the finer points in the data here that we need to look at. Okay? Now, remember, Predator Badlands right now, this weekend, is enjoying IMAX. They're enjoying unencumbered PLF screens, premium large format, for the overwhelming most part. The problem is they're not going to enjoy that come next weekend because they're going to have some big competition coming in that's going to consume those types of screens, none the least of which is going to be something like The Running Man starring Glenn Powell, okay, a remake of another 80s classic. That's going to put a lot of pressure and competition for Predator Badlands to have a successful second weekend at the box office, not just because it's going to soak up a very similar, if not the identical demographic to Predator Badlands to go see Running Man, but it's also going to consume the most lucrative, financial lucrative assets that Badlands is working with this weekend, namely PLFs and IMAX. Now, they talk about some of the ratings. They're saying this has a better CinemaScore than even the first Predator movie. And I'm like, dude, it's a ridiculous comparison. And it basically should tell you that don't have a whole lot of faith in CinemaScore a lot of times. They have their place. They're like Samba TV. Comparing one CinemaScore to another can be useful, but it's not the end-all, be-all. It doesn't really paint anywhere near the whole picture. CinemaScore didn't exist when the original Predator came out. You've got people going back and rating older movies that they've watched for the first time on television versus seeing it in the theater. It's a bad comparative point of reference. Go check out criticless.com over there. This is going to be the new, this is the people's answer to hot trash like Rotten Tomatoes, for example, okay? Real people giving honest reviews as opposed to critics. You can see here our boy Blaine out there, Blaine, who runs Criticless, and Criticless is a partner website along with That Park Place and Geeks and Gamers. We're all working together now from that standpoint, but you can see 38%, right? This is a more realistic score for me. Now, look, I know we've got a lot of friends out there that really enjoyed Predator Badlands. I'm not trying to take anything away from you. Believe me, okay? Full disclosure, I haven't seen it, and I told you guys a week ago I really didn't care that much about going to see this. I will probably check it out eventually when it hits streaming, but this was not something that was going to get me up off the couch to go spend 3 to 4 hours of my time to go sit in a theater back and forth to go see this. But anyways, go check out Criticless out there. One of the things in this piece from D'Alessandro was the demographic. Remember how they talked about how this movie was dialed down to PG-13 basically by eliminating red blood? You had a lot of violence in the movie from what I understood. They went with a PG-13 rating, which normally you've heard me talk about this before. And when you take a horror movie and you dial it down to where you can just scoot in under the PG-13, you open up a whole big wide swath, right? It's a really bold move, and you have to do it with the right franchise. Great example was the first Megan movie. The second one, poo. But the first Megan movie going with the PG-13 rating was a big success for that film, making it more accessible. Making Five Nights at Freddy's PG-13 is unequivocally the right move, okay? Because of the target demographic and the audience for it, and that movie made a ton of money. Predator Badlands, it does not seem to be enjoying a boost from dropping the rating. What's interesting, though, is that going PG-13 may not have necessarily brought in a younger audience. D'Alessandro says Badlands only pulled in 5%. 5% for the 13 to 17 demo. This is Renegade Jr., my son, Renegade Jr.'s demo, right? He had stuff going on this weekend. I think he wants to go see this movie, but it wasn't going to happen this weekend because he had too much other extracurricular going on. 5% of the audience was 13 to 17. This did not open anything. It opened nothing, okay? Compared to 2018's The Predator, which, again, still haven't seen, don't care. It shows that older males still come out for the IP 57 to 45, as well as older females. Here's the thing. If it's still older males and you decided to turn this new movie, one, into the perspective of the Predator himself, which is a cool idea that I'm not opposed to whatsoever, but then you turn it into he's like a weak little runt of his tribe, and you know all the joking about it's a love story between him and a half chewed up robot. Guess what that older demo is going to do? They're going to do what I do. They're going to stay away. I can already hear the Disney earnings call, which we will be covering live this week right here on Valiant Renegade. I can already hear Bob Iger talking about it's the biggest movie in the world right now. $40 million domestic box office is the estimate right now. Now, considering the estimates, again, have been climbing through the weekend, I expect this actually to be hopefully a little bit higher if the trends hold. So maybe $41 million by the time we're all said and done. International box office was originally pegged coming into the weekend at about $35 million. Now, you notice the overperformance in the international box office as of right now with the estimates was nowhere near as hot as it was domestically. So that should be a little bit of a warning sign there as well. So as of right now, opening weekend for this new Fox Disney movie at $80 million. All right, so what's the problem with this? The problem with this is right here. Production budget, $105 million. Now, to be abundantly clear and to be magnanimously fair and equitable in this analysis, this is certainly one of the most well-controlled, reasonable budgets of a quote-unquote at least borderline blockbuster type film that Disney has done in quite a while. Disney actually has a decent shot here, right? The only thing they've had so far has been, or this year in terms of an unquestioned success, has been Lilo and Stitch. And then I think, as I've been saying all year, Zootopia 2, I think, is going to be another unquestioned success for Disney, short of it coming out and being an absolute disaster. Here's the problem we're facing. The movie is going to have to go almost 3x from its opening weekend just to try to get into, cost coverage, or a little less than 3x, maybe 2.8, 2.9x. Do I think, or have I seen any indication at this point that the Walt Disney Company spent a $100+ million budget on marketing? Not really. Not really, as their usual standard fare. I think realistically, this movie's still going to have to get to somewhere around 350 to maybe as high as 400 million to cover all of its expenses with production and marketing, right? 350 to 400 million would bring home about 175 million to 200 million for Disney after the theaters take their cut domestically and around the world. If the box office remains relatively even, time will tell. Y'all tell me out there. Here's the issue I have. I don't see a 3x here. But the reality here is that this is not a big enough start. I mean, to say that the movie overperformed its projections coming into this weekend is lovely. But the problem is, again, the projections were so abysmal to begin with that they really could not have gotten much worse, I don't think.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.